Base. Question basically is, what does it mean, Hasam, Nafsheinu, בחיים? He places our soul in life, given that the nefesh is chai, be'etzem, essentially alive, as we explained at length in the previous two shiurim. So to understand that, Yuvan behekter, again, bi ra'inyan, the safe masa, machshava tchila. So this is a quote from Lachadoidi, and it says that the final act is not the first thought. It's not what it says. It says machshava tchila, thought prior. Meaning, the meaning of the words machshava tchila in contrast to tchilas machshava, the first thought, moira indicates tchila gamla darga yosin alis machshava. It actually, the final act connects to a level that's even before than the first thought. Above the first thought, and the Maimon is going on to explain how is that possible. It all begins with the first desire that's expressed in the first thought, as we'll explain at length in the question. And it's this level, not tchilas machshava, machshava tchila, that precedes thought, that the final act expresses. Meaning that in action, first of all, action is far removed from thought. But here we're saying not just Maisa in a safe Maisa, the end of the Maisa. That reaches this level which we don't understand yet of Machshava Tchila. The Mailim B'Tchilas Vareshis and Machshava before the beginning and first thought. In the movement, it would appear not understood whatsoever. What is the source of action if not thought? And how is it possible that the final action somehow reach deeper than the thought that began it all? I feel even the first thought. Since how is it possible? It cannot be since the safe Maisa. It is the first thought. That is what set in motion the final act. Further elaboration upon the question, the way it is in the nefesh, and also the maila. He can understand the way it is the maila. Any returning light, as it were, it's a principle that nothing can reach higher than its source. Anything which reflects back cannot reflect back higher than the source from where it began. What's the famous illustration in halacha? So this brings often. We've encountered many times, not for a while, but the Gashmis and Halach. It's a mikdash, mikveh. No, the mikveh, the source of the mikveh that was on the roof that the Kohen Gadol used on Yom Kippur, Atom cannot be higher than the water is going to rise to get to the roof. Miles away. It's a law of physics. It will not go higher than the original source. It's Pasha Begashmi is certainly true, as he's speaking over here. This is the principle. Every Chayze means everything. Anything that reflects back, that comes back from a source, goes back to Aschalas Sheresh Hamshachasai. It's a proof of how high the okay, we'll go into it again one day, not now, be closer to, actually now's the time to learn the laws of the Beis HaMikdash. How high exactly was that spring, and how high was the Beis HaMikdash? It can only go to the source. Being in a Maisa, a Machshava, so if we're speaking about our model now, which is action and thought, the ascent of the thought cannot touch, reach, or express can only go to the first thought. Well, the Maimon says certainly not high. What's this machshava tchila that he speaks of? What is this that the Lachadoidi is saying that's what the safe Maisa reaches? It simply would appear inexplicable, not understood. Like it is above, so the same way that is l'mayla, and everything down here is a reflection of the way things are up there. everything down here is a result of the way things are up there. So now talking about the way it is Lamaila, by the Eibishter. Before he spoke, just the way it is by us. Now in the source, what's God's thought? It's the general desire for creation. That starts the whole process. From which all of Ishtalshus then emerges, and the creation of all the worlds. As we've encountered, remember, there's Abiyad, the Protis, and Abiyad, the Klolus. There's the individual four worlds as we're familiar with, and then there's Abiyah, Atzilus, Bria, Asiya in the grander, bigger, ultimate picture. So what's what? Who remembers? He just tells us now, Asiya is what? Atzilus. So going up, what's Yitzirah? I'll remind you, Yitzirah is Keser, Bria is Ak, and Atzilus Aklolus is Eir himself. Yeah. Ak Adam Kadman, if you know these levels, good. If not, you get the general idea. So Ad La'ilam Asiya Aklolus. So what is what we need to understand now is this. What's the first machshava? It's for this whole project called creation. Starting with, the whole point is that it's going to end in action. So the first end in action is Atzilus. That's the first relative action, deed performed by God. And then specifically, in a much more, the protis means a much more limited way. That is in our physical asiyah, the world that precedes directly our physical world. Or overall, it is our world. He says, sure, it's our world. Asiyah protis is still in Elam Ruchni, but it's the chayis, the energy, the chayis Ruchni, the Elam Hazet. Which is why he says, Adam Zagash v'achumli. Elam Hazet B'chlal is asiyah protis, but including its corporal, physical components, that too is, of course, Elam Asiyah protis, which is Sof Masa in detail. The Sof Masa in general, the big picture, that's Atzilus, and Sof Masa B'protis, which is the Kavana, is Elam Hazet. That's the Sof Masa, which is reflective of what? Of the original thought. So when the final act ascends, what does that mean in our world? What does it mean? It ascends, goes to its kadmusa. It means a person considers what he's done, goes back to his original intention, thought, desire, and considers what he's done in context. Does this fulfill my desire or not? That's chayzer lekadmusa. He's considering, he's machshava, the final act. Are we clear? Yes, everybody. So how far is he considering? His first conscious desire, and that's where the will, the desire for this whole project, in God's case, creation, ascended, first appeared, emerged. Either we're speaking about the specific will, which is Gashmi, or the general first non-differentiated will, more relatively speaking, more general, on Klolos Eilamas, so therefore it's already fulfilled to some degree in Elam Atzilus. So even in the primary thought, so that's where it goes up to. It goes to the Ratzon Prati or the Ratzon Klali, all the way to Ein Sof Niatzimtzum, which is the first general Aliyah Ratzon, even higher than Ratzon Klali. It's called, quote, Ba'ifan Shashir Ba'atzmi B'koyach Kol Mashas Leis B'Peil. We've encountered this many times too, that this is the essential Ratzon where God, Shashir Ba'atzmi means he entertained already all that which would be B'Peil. It's often translated as estimated, terrible word, as I could say. It's not estimating to see whether they can do it or not. It's entertaining the whole project of creation. So there, even in Ein Sof, that's as high as we're going to go to find the Sof Masa, the final act which completes that original desire. And that's the meaning of, that's Taka, a famous quote from Sefer Yetzirah, which we often put together, but now the mind is differentiating. That's the meaning of that beginning is wedged in the end, and the end is wedged in the beginning, because the very primal motive is only realized in the final act. So that will explain that the end, final act, gets to the first thought, but that's not what Sof Machshava Tchila means. That's Tchilas Machshava. This quote here in Chadodi is Machshava Tchila, which precedes the Machshava. How can the final act reach a place which is precedes the first thought? Because that's where it all began. It's a very simple question. Why is he elaborating? Because he wants us in the end to understand what is Nimshach through Sof Masa down here, and we do the final mitzvah. But to get to that, much elaboration. We're clear before we go further? So please tell me, what does it mean in our context when when the Sof Masa rather is Chayes L'Kadmusa? What does it mean? B'nefesh Adam, and for God. It sounds, the returning light returns to its, what light, what's returning? What are we talking about?
Does the final act, now the original thought for that action comes out.
More than that. No, no, it's more than that. You're saying objectively, the final act completes the first thought. We're not talking about an objective fact. The first thought could long have receded. It's not what he's saying. He's saying factually it carries it out. But the Sof Masa is oile v'chayz l'kadmusa. We just explained it. What does it mean? You didn't explain it well enough. You're saying objective fact. It could be that he's no longer thinking about it. Just pointing out this is what you started with. That's not what he's saying here.
What he's saying is that it has an aliyah back to.
But what is it translated for the McGill student? What does it mean? Simple English. He said it. Okay, I'll say it again, maybe. He considers now how this has fulfilled his first desire. He looks at it, sits back, looks at it, and then considers, literally thinks about it. This all began, that first desire, that first impetus, how this is the realization of it. Where's he entertaining this? Yeah, which level? Machshava Tchila, that first thought. He's revisiting that first thought, which recedes from the forefront of consciousness throughout the long process of building your house. You're busy with the details of it. It's there as a contextual background, but completely recedes. Now at the end, he considers it. That first daydream, that first dream where I want a home and I want this kind of home. He reconsiders how this fulfills that. It's Chayze L'Kadmus. So where's the Sof Masa going? How high can it go? Obviously,
back to that
the place that started it all. And what's the shine of the Maimah?
See that. How can it go to a place that's higher Tchila of the Machshava?
That precedes the Machshava. Machshava Tchila means a Darga Machshava Tchila. His Machshava Tchila is before that. Not Tchila is a Machshava, the first thought. So what he's saying, the mind will tell us, I'm sure, but he's saying that there is this essential level where no rotzen is even articulated, but that's where it all starts. It's not even a rotz. Then what is it? To be seen. But to get there, much more elaboration. Let's go further. Again, to all appreciate what our mitzvah means at the end. What creation means to God. Not just the realization of a desired project. Clearly, it goes back to Machshava Tchila. What is this? We're clear what we need to understand. Yes.
If I had read this, I never would have gotten to what you just said about the contemplation. Where did you find that this is reflecting on the contemplation as opposed to.
That's why I'm sitting here to explain this. It's not here. Explaining what it means. What does it mean that we're speaking? I don't know. You have another explanation? Happy for you to share it. I'm not talking magic. I don't know what else you're thinking here. Safe mice says that's what it means. Kadmos is the Ratzin, the safe mice is there. That means that he's considering it there. Huh?
What does it mean then when he's saying he's talking about there's an
that the Ratzin,
but why? But we're talking about what you're now saying when you perform an act, soft nice. So why is the kind of contemplation that happens at that time?
That darga is it's soft if not symptom. That's the rots and starts it all. There's no
being oila to there,
to there.
Not that that's what's
It's being oily to there. There he entertained what he's going to do, and now it's considering it as done. It's done, and he's considering it. He's thinking the safe mass is here, and it's oila. How does it match up to, or reflective of the shir atzim b'koyach, what he intended to do? Now the intention is carried out. He's thinking about it at the level of his intention, how that intention is now realized. That in fact is the level he's saying it's the highest level it can go to.
But now that machshava is different because it comes with the mice now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a different thought than potential. It's actual, but what is it doing? It's actualizing the original plan, the original desire. So all was there initially in this very embryonic state. Now it's realized, and now the person, using the Mashal Gashmi, is reconsidering, is now looking at what he's done and then seeing and enjoying how that's fulfilling, indeed, accurately, faithfully, that which he had wanted to do. This is similar to the Tainich that it speaks about. That this is Shabbos. Shabbos is the Tainuk considering creation. The job well done, sitting back surveying it, and this is what I wanted, and this is what happened. The deep satisfaction in that, in a goal realized, an objective realized. So how deeply is a person considering it? As deep as the original desire and thought that conceived it? No, it says here. Say it actually goes deeper than the desire that, and the whole project, the whole idea of it all. The idea of it all. Tied in the idea of it all. What does this mean? That's the Shaila. Yeah? Please give him. So to appreciate the safe master machshava tchila that's higher than the first machshava. First, let's understand the first machshava, which, as we said before, just at the end of the previous ayahs, we just said that the first machshava that's expressed in the beginning, wedged in the end, and the end is wedged in the beginning. That's the final act is reflective of the first thought of the first desire. That expresses, which we understand, the end in the beginning, but not high. But let's understand that. This whole ayah, I think, is going to explain and the way it is Lamaila, that darga, and then there's even a deeper darga of a deeper connection of Seif Masa Machshava Tchila. That's where it's going here. So first the lower level of beginning is wedged in the end, that classic level. The one that you basically understand, further elaboration. Let's look at the classic model of a person doing an act of kindness. Why does he do that? Because he wants he wants to give the poor person who doesn't have, and he wants to give him. So in the end, as he gives him the dollar, let's trace it back to how the whole thing works in the nefesh. What's the first conscious thought that the bestower has? This the very first thing is compassion, simple compassion for the poor fellow. So because he's aroused with compassion, I got to do something, and I want to do something. I want to do a chesed. So what precedes this will is the rachamim, is the compassion. So that's the reason, and the oinig, he's compassionate, and by giving the poor person, he's fulfilling his compassion. That's the tainuk he has, that he's a compassionate person, and he's fulfilling that compassionate, deep part of him. Let's get that clear. The rachmim nasim tam v'oinig l'rotzen zeh. Everything is relative. So the rachmim, the compassion that starts the whole thing in, the whole process, that's the fuel, the tam v'oinig, the fuel of this will. Clear? Yeah? So now we're going to the third level. First level is rachmim. Next level is what? First rachmim, then the rotzen, the what? What is it? The rotzen, the will. The will. I want to do something. You're aroused, first of all, by the pitiful state of the poor person. Touches you deeply. That's one. Number two, I want to do something. That's rotz. That's the second level. Now, third level. So now we start thinking. That's level number 3. Till now, it's beyond articulated language or thoughts, because the thinking process is already what's he gonna do? How's he gonna do? So then comes level 3 thought. And then the heart is stirred. Okay, this needs to be understood. Is rachamim not the heart?
It's not stirred already when you have compassion.
Yeah. So we'll leave that unanswered to think about it.
The rotzen is higher than the midas.
Yeah, and Racham is saying, yeah, you can ask the question already earlier. How do we say that it starts with Rachamim and then goes to Rotzen? Rotzen is higher than Midas. So Rachamim here does not mean the classic Midas. It means, L'chora, he means the natural instinct that a Jew is born with. Yidna Baishonim, Nachmanim, Gimna Chasonim, is these essential properties. Whereas now the chesed here is a chesed that's born from his thought process.
Midas.
This is the classic midas, born, not instinctual, but born from his thinking about this. But the rachamim was unthinking. He was just walking down the street, doing his own business, and see this, and just he's deeply stirred. That's an atmistic thing. It's not a midas thing. And why rachamim? Because it's one of the natural midas that even nefesh b'am is as instinctually. Further elaboration, but that'll have to do for us now. Let's finish to get to the sentence, end of the sentence. Let's trace it down. So what are the levels so far? Rachamim, like etzem. Then one word will do. Rachamim, next. Rotzen, next. Machshava, machshava, that's 3, then 4, lev, the heart, the achakach. Now, once it's in the heart, then it goes back from the heart to the mind. As the heart is stirred, how are we going to do this? Now we're going to get down to the practicalities. Well, how does he thinks how does it think about this, and to what's the next step? Baruch Betanya is explained in Tanya in the Parakhov. Then Machshava Ledibur, so it goes back. Then he talks about it until he actually does it. So basically, we'll revisit this tomorrow. The steps, because there's a chayza here a little bit. It's not just all the way down. Once it goes to the heart, it goes back to the machshava again. But a practical machshava, how to implement his desire to benefit the poor person. Okay, we'll map it out, God willing, with clarity to maybe even make a chart for it.
There's an interplay between machshava and there is he's using the word machshava sometimes instead of moichin or whatever.
What we're saying, yes, there's two levels of machshava. The latter one is the practical machshava, like how am I going to do this? And the first one is just conscious of his desire.
It's not moichin.
Yeah, seichel. Yeah, it's seichel. Yeah,
Seichel. Okay.
Yeah, that's seichel. Okay, more detailed. It's a bit nebular. Be'ez Hashem, God's help tomorrow. Okay, I don't know if I had a story.